Lesson 9.5 is on something called completing the square. Imagine that you could not solve a quadratic equation by factoring because maybe the numbers don't work out neatly for that kind of thing, and you need some other tool in your toolbox to find the solution. This is your tool. We're going to go through the problem on page 562 in your book. So if you've got a quadratic equation in this format, ax squared plus bx equals c, and here's one that we're going to work with, x squared plus 6x equals 216. Do you remember when we were just factoring trinomials, and at the very end we talked about factoring perfect square trinomials, and it worked easily, it followed a pattern, it was very straightforward. Well, don't you think it would be nice if we had some way to turn this into a perfect square trinomial? It would be nice, yeah. So we're actually going to do that. How are we going to do that? Well, we need to add another term in here because 216 is not a perfect square. So, well, I'm going to show you this next step, but then we're going to take it apart because they do several things in this first step. If you divide 6 by 2, you get 3. If you square 3, you get 9. And by going through that process, you turn this into a perfect square trinomial, because now it'll easily factor into x plus 3 quantity squared, right? Exactly. And you can do that. You can add 9 to this side as long as you what? Also add 9 to this side. We'll go through this a couple times. It'll make more sense eventually. And here they give you the write-up. Take your b term, divide it by 2, square that to get 9. And at this point, most of the hard work is done. So now we're going to simplify this side and we're going to factor this. Okay, there we go. And what are we left with? Ooh, that's a kind of a wacky looking answer. So we have x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 225. And what did they do with that? Oh, look at that. They figured out that the square root of 225 is plus or minus 15. You are not quite done yet, though, because we can simplify. We've got a 3 over here and either a positive or a negative 15 over here. Because this could be positive, could be negative, that means we have two different answers. So we're going to solve this and figure out x equals 15, positive 15 minus 3. We're also going to figure out x equals negative 15 minus 3. So we have, yeah, they wrote it as two separate equations, and then they simplified it. So x is going to equal 12, or x is going to equal negative 18. Those are your two solutions for this original equation. Let's walk through another one. This one, we're going to do the same steps. We just start with a different format. They have this term here. They have it equal to 0. You are going to move this 16 over here by subtracting it from each side. So we're going to end up with x squared minus 14x equals 16, and then we're going to complete the square. There we go. So this next step, remember, is the only tricky thing at all. You have to divide this by 2, which is going to give you 7, and then you have to square 7. And then you have to add 49 to each side, just like that. Now, a little simplification over here, a little factoring over here. X minus 7 quantity squared equals 33. Take the square root of each side. What are we going to do this time? Is there a perfect square root for 33? Aha. So they did this. See how they changed the equal sign to an approximately equal sign? And they give you plus or minus 5.74. And you're not quite done because you have to get this, you have to add 7 over here. This is where they split it into two equations and they say x is approximately equal to 7 plus this, or x is approximately equal to 7 minus that. And give you your two answers. Okay, the last thing that I need to show you with this, sometimes a is not equal to 1. What do you do in that case? Well, you have to make it equal to 1. How do you do that, you ask? Well, let's zoom on down the page a little bit and figure it out. All right, I'm kind of skipping all of the word problem stuff above this to get down here to the actual quadratic equation that we're working with. We have 3x squared plus 8x plus 4 equals 100. And we need to get the numbers on this side of the equal sign. So subtract that 4. We have 3x squared plus 8x equals 96. And now we have a problem with an a term that's not 1. How are we going to get rid of that? Anybody remember? That is right. We need to divide every single term by 3, which gets a little bit ugly because now we have 8/3 x. But completing the square will still work. Thank goodness for your calculators, I know you're all thinking. This is the important step, the one that comes next. We have to divide 8/3 by 2 and then square it. So we're going to end up with, and complete the square. Okay, 8/3 divided by 2 and squared, there we go, is 16/9. Add it to both sides. And now you have your factorization over here. You have the thing it's equal to over here. Solving the equation, square roots of this, and yes, just use your calculator to approximate this. We will deal with square roots in another chapter. But we have two answers and we're not quite done. We need to get this 4/3 over here. This is where they split it into 2. X plus 4/3 is equal to positive 5.81 or negative 5.81, and then once you move the 4/3 to the other side, those are your two answers. And again, once they approximated the square root, they switched from an equal sign to an approximately equal sign. So let's sum up. Completing the square, first, will always work. Second, you need the problem to be in this format, x squared plus bx, and leave yourself a little space here, equals c. You may need to move c from this side to that side. And you may need to divide by a if it's not 1. Number 3, b can be positive or negative, and then it will either be x minus something quantity squared or x plus something quantity squared. Number 4, you will have two values for x. Make sure you find them both. And that is all. Okay. I want you to practice this a little bit. You're probably going to have to go back and watch the video a little or check in your book. Keep this list handy. Of course, I know you've put it in your notebook already, so it'll be there for a test. These are the problems I want you to practice with. And after this section comes big fun.